Hi, this is Lenovo's budget gaming laptop, the LOQ 16. They have packed in a lot of nice features into this thing, and I've been using it for about 6 months. In this video I'm gonna talk about how it's been living with this laptop for the past 6 months. Am I going to marry it, or will I kick it out? What's the performance like? Have I had any issues with it? What are the good and the bad things about this laptop? Those are some of the questions I will answer in this video. I bought it with my own money, and this video is not sponsored by anyone. All the opinions you're gonna hear are my own. The price was about $1,200, including taxes and shipping, here in Sweden about 6 months ago. This is still a great machine nearing the end of 2024 when this review is recorded. But be aware that pricing does vary very much depending on where you live. So check the pricing in your region before you buy anything. I'm gonna save you some time, so here's what I think are the good and bad things about this laptop. Let's start with the bad. The battery life isn't great on this unit. It has the smaller 60 watt-hour battery. There is an option for an 80 watt-hour as well. The screen is an IPS panel, but the color accuracy and the color gamut are not that good, but it's fine for gaming. The chassis looks kind of cheap. One of the SSD slots is not really a full 2280 slot, but it kind of also is. Watch the review for more info on that. Speakers are pretty bad. They get loud but don't sound good. With some tweaking you can make them sound okay. And here are some of the good things. First off, the price. Right now the price is still pretty good here in Sweden for this laptop. And I've checked Newegg and Best Buy, pricing seems to be okay there as well. The performance is great. The build quality for a plastic laptop, it's pretty good. The thermals, the fan noise, the keyboard, the upgradeability, and it has some nice features too, like a max switch, advanced Optimus G-Sync, FreeSync support, and that kind of thing. The prices are of course going to vary a lot depending on where you live, so compare the price of this laptop with other laptops like the Legion Slim 5 or the Legion Pro 5 or some other brands and models in your region for the best deal. You might find a Legion Slim 5 or a Legion Pro for the same price used as this LOQ. And for those of you who want to know how and why I came to this conclusion, here's the rest of the video. But before you go, like that subscribe button if you want to. Cheers!
Hi, it's me from the future. I just wanted to add something before we continue this review. It was recorded in November, late November of 2024. As you all know, there are some new CPUs, GPUs, laptops and stuff like that being announced at CES 2025. And you're probably wondering, should I buy a laptop that is from 2023 in 2025? And I say, if you can find it with the Ryzen 7 with the RTX 4060 with 16 gigs of RAM at least, 1 terabyte hard drive, the 165 Hz screen, the 80 watt-hour battery, and if you can find a model that has all of that for a good price, and when I say good price, you should check your region what a good price is where you live, and if you can find a good price on that, yeah, you should buy it. Even if there are some new stuff coming out very soon, I think the prices will be really high. Alright, that's all I have to say from the future. Now, continue the review.
This is the Lenovo LOQ. The unit I am reviewing is the 2023 model, and there's a new 2024 model out now with some visual and internal changes. But what did I get for the money? Let's go over the specs. The GPU is an RTX 4060 with 8 gigs of RAM, and it runs at 115 watts max, according to Lenovo. The CPU is an 8-core, 16-thread Ryzen 7840HS. It has 16 gigs of 5600 MHz RAM, and it is upgradable. The SSD is a 1TB 2242 NVMe SSD. It also has a second SSD slot. The battery is only 60 watt-hours. The IPS screen is matte, and it has a resolution of 1920 by 1200, and it's not a touch screen. It has 144 Hz G-Sync and FreeSync support. The webcam is a 1080p camera, and it has an electronic shutter. Now, this is what you get in the plain looking box. A charger, some documentation, and the laptop itself. And also a diagram showing how to switch between different power modes using the FN plus Q keys and what the different colors on the power button represent. It also shows how to control the backlight for the keyboard, the camera switch, where to plug in the charger, and so on. The laptop weighs about 2.8 kilos with the charger and 2.4 without it. The charger is rated at 230 watts, and it has a proprietary Lenovo plug that works great, and it does not matter which way you orient it when you plug it in. Taking a look at the chassis, it's an all-plastic build from top to bottom, and it feels very sturdy, although it kind of looks a bit cheap with this finish. And it is cheap, that is. But I like the looks. It has some painted cooling fins that can be seen from the back and the sides. There's a large rubber foot in the back and two smaller ones in the front that keep the laptop stable on a table. Yo, what up? There's also no gamery logos on the lid. You have this little Lenovo badge down in the corner and the LOQ logo on the top. The port selection is pretty good too. On the left there is a single USB-C port. It's a 20 gigabit port with DisplayPort 1.4 and charging capabilities. Just want to mention that I've tried charging with different chargers and it works with my 65 watt Lenovo USB-C laptop charger, but it doesn't work with my 100 watt PD 3.0 USB-C charger, which is kind of strange, so be aware of that. And also there's a headset jack. On the right side we have a single USB-A 2.0 according to the specs, but I've plugged in an external SSD and I got about 350 megabytes per second read and write speed, so I think this is actually a 5 gigabit port, and for some reason Lenovo lists this as a USB 2 port. And here's the electronic shutter for the webcam. Rest of the ports are in the back. Here we have two USB-A 20 gigabit ports, a gigabit Ethernet jack, HDMI 2.1 that is connected to the GPU, and it can run 4K 120Hz screens with VRR and HDR. And we also have the charging port. There are icons for each port on the back, but they are not illuminated like on the more expensive Legion laptops. Now that we looked on the outside, let's look on the inside and see what we find. We can see the small 60 watt hour battery. There is an option for an 80 watt hour battery, which I recommend you pick if you get the choice. There's a lot of empty space for the larger battery to fit. The fans look nice and large with 3 cooling pipes. We'll take a look at the temps and performance later on in the video. On this side we have the factory SSD that is a 2242 length, which is quite unusual. But as you can see, there is room for a 2280 SSD in this slot, but you can't really fit a 2280 because of the standoff for the factory SSD, which is built into the chassis. I mean, you could screw a single-sided SSD in there, but it would bend a little. Or you could remove the standoff somehow using a Dremel or something, but I wouldn't recommend it. On the other side, there's room for a full-size 2280 SSD, which is great. We also have 2 DIMM slots for the RAM, and the Wi-Fi Bluetooth card is also upgradable, so overall very good internals and upgradability. The keyboard is nice and tactile feeling with 2 stages of white backlighting on my model, but there's an option for a 4-zone RGB backlight also, but I like the white backlighting. Typing feels great and so does gaming. I've not had any issues with the trackpad either. The palm rejection was good on my machine. There's a numpad off to the right that is nice to have, but I would have preferred to not have the numpad and move the keyboard in a bit more towards the center. The numpad can be used as a macro pad, so you can record macros, which is nice. And you can choose if the macros will be enabled all the time or only when gaming. The arrow keys are full-sized and so is the enter key on this Nordic version. The row of function keys is okay, but I wish they had moved the brightness and volume controls to the arrow keys instead of the F keys. The trackpad, it's a plastic surface that is nice and smooth, not as good as a glass surface, but very nice for a plastic surface. It uses Windows Precision drivers, so all gestures work great and the tracking is good. It's pretty easy to click, more so on the bottom half than on the top because it's a diving board design, but overall a very good trackpad. The size is also good. It doesn't need to be bigger on a gaming laptop in my opinion. You're probably gonna use a mouse when gaming anyway, and using it for everyday tasks works great. Now let's talk about the screen. This model has a 1920 by 1200 16 by 10 16-inch display with really poor color accuracy and a low color gamut at only 45% of NTSC. The refresh rate is at 144 Hz and it has G-Sync and FreeSync support. I don't have any equipment to measure the response time or color accuracy of a screen, but I'm very sensitive to ghosting and this screen is pretty good in that remark. You can enable overdrive in the Lenovo Vantage software for better pixel response times. The viewing angle from the side is not that great, but it's okay if you're standing in front of it. I've seen better screens, but I've also seen a lot worse. There's a bit of screen wobble, but it's acceptable. It's not as prominent when gaming or typing, so it didn't bother me that much at all. As you can see, the bezels are asymmetrical with larger ones on the top and bottom and thinner bezels on the sides. The hinges still feel great after 6 months of using this laptop. It's easy to open with one hand and the screen goes almost all the way back, not the full 180 degrees as the Legion. There's a 1080p webcam at the top, and here's what the webcam looks like, and this is how the webcam sounds like. The kill switch kills the webcam, and that's great for privacy. Everyone is watching these days. There's a mute button on the keyboard for the microphone as well. The thermal performance is pretty good. Fan noise is okay when using the laptop in balanced mode. It's about 51 decibels and the noise is not that high-pitched or annoying. But I've mostly used the laptop in silent mode because you'll still get very good performance in this mode and it will stay very quiet when gaming. The RTX 40 series graphics cards are very efficient at lower wattages and can deliver much better performance at lower watts compared to the previous 30 series. In performance mode, you'll squeeze out a couple of more FPS at the cost of much more fan noise, and it's not worth it in my opinion. You can of course use noise cancelling headphones if you're gaming alone, so you won't have to listen to the fans. This has two small downfiring speakers that sound like shit out of the box. The Nahimic app is absolutely necessary to get decent sound out of the speakers. Here's a comparison to my MacBook Pro 14. If you're watching this on a phone, maybe you won't hear that big of a difference, but I'll tell you that it is a big difference between the MacBook and the LOQ, or LOQ. You will have to tune the speakers like this in the software to get an okay sound out of them. Here are the settings I use and I recommend you also use them. Here's a comparison of how it sounds with the settings turned on and off. Even if you can get pretty good sound of them using these settings, I still recommend using headphones. Now to the meat and the potatoes. This is a gaming laptop, so how does it perform in games? It does really good for what it is. The 4060 delivers pretty good performance in 1280p, and that's one of the benefits of having a lower resolution screen on a gaming laptop. I used the balance mode for testing in Hogwarts Legacy with high settings and ray tracing turned on to high. Also I'm using DLSS quality. I got between 70 and 90 FPS, but I did experience some stutters here and there. But overall, it was a very good gaming experience. I also always try Quake Champions to see how high the FPS can go, and it's around 200 FPS in this game with high settings, and it feels very smooth, which is fantastic. In CS2, I got around 200 to 250 FPS on Dust 2 playing with bots using high settings, so very good here also. Fortnite performance was kind of good. I was running it with epic settings and ray tracing turned on and everything else also turned on. It hovered around 60 FPS. Sometimes it was higher, sometimes it was lower. I think you can easily get a lot more FPS if you turn down some of the settings like ray tracing for an example. For a more in-depth look at the gaming performance and if you want to know how it performs in other games, I recommend you check out Jarrod's tech video on this laptop. I'll leave a link in the description or up in the corner. The battery on this model is small and it doesn't last very long. In my testing it lasted about 2 to 3 hours when doing standard stuff like writing documents, browsing the web and watching a YouTube video here or there. The brightness was set at around 80%. Battery life when gaming can vary very much depending on the game and or if you're using a frame rate limiter. I got about 30 minutes playing Fortnite with epic settings in balanced mode on the battery with a capped frame rate at 121 FPS. So you could get longer battery life if you limit the frame rate to 60 or lower even. Also, you can disable the Nvidia GPU and use the Radeon 780M iGPU, which is pretty good on its own for more battery life. The 780M is the same GPU that is in the ROG Ally and the Legion Go, for an example. There are some features to keep your battery health in check, like limiting the charging to 85%. Also, you can turn on rapid charge if you want to charge faster. You can charge 0 to 80% in an hour, which I don't think is that fast. If you get the larger 80 Wh battery, you can charge it from 0 to 50% in 30 minutes. You can change all these settings in the Lenovo Vantage app, which we'll talk about later. You can definitely edit videos on this laptop. The performance is there for 4K video editing, but I would not do it on the laptop screen. The colors are way too inaccurate for that. Just use an external screen for photo or video editing. Music production is not recommended on this laptop. Latency mon results are quite terrible, and I tried using Cubase Pro 12 on this with very bad results. You can put a lot of plugins on a track and you can use a lot of tracks and instruments at the same time, but the audio drops out and stutters frequently. It doesn't matter how high or low you set the buffer size for the sound card either. And it's not just with Cubase, I've tried FL Studio as well with the same results. I don't have any footage of that, unfortunately, and no, it's not a driver issue. Maybe there was something wrong with my Windows installation. I tried turning off core isolation in Windows. It helped a little bit, but there were still a lot of stutters happening. Have you had any experience with music production on this laptop? Please tell me down in the comments. Wi-Fi performance was really good on this unit. I've never had any issues with the connection, and it can easily max out my internet speed, which is 500 megabits up and down. Also, the 2.4 GHz band gives good range when needed. I can use it in my backyard and still get decent speeds. Bluetooth performance has also been great. I've tried it with multiple Xbox Series X controllers connected to it, and it works great. I can have the laptop hooked up to my TV in the living room and sit in a sofa, which is about 2.5 meters away, and play games without any issues. Let's talk about the software and bloatware. There is some bloatware installed, like antivirus software and some Lenovo apps that you probably won't use, but I'm not so bothered by this because I always install a clean copy of Windows before I use the laptop. I first download all the necessary drivers and do a clean install. Sure, it takes some time, but for me it's worth doing. And I only install stuff that I really need or use. The Lenovo Vantage software is a control center for the laptop. Here's a quick overview of the software. On the main screen you'll see info about your device, like the GPU, CPU, RAM and the SSD usage. You can see the thermal modes here as well, and you can overclock the GPU, and it gives you a warning when you do that, of course. There's something called Network Boost that I haven't used. There's an auto close feature that lets you close programs automatically when you launch a game to save on resources, but I would just download more RAM for that. You can change the GPU working mode, switch between hybrid mode, hybrid iGPU only mode, hybrid auto mode, and dedicated GPU mode. Pause the video here if you want to see what each mode does. There's a touchpad lock that locks the touchpad. You have rapid charge for the battery if you want to degrade it faster, and also Wi-Fi security, which does something that I don't know. You can update your drivers and BIOS from the system update menu. The numpad can be used as a macro pad, so you can record macros, which is nice, and you can choose if the macros will be enabled all the time or only when gaming, as I said before. In the power menu, you can see the battery status and warranty status. Change the different charging modes and set a charging cap at 75 to 80% for preserving the longevity of the battery. And there's some other things you can change here. There's also a menu for the camera and some camera controls like brightness and contrast. In the hardware scan menu, you can do a full system diagnostics and check that everything works as it should. And in the advanced menu, you have some options for the built-in microphones. Are there any major issues or quirks with this laptop? None that I can find. The screen and the battery are the worst thing about this model, but if you can find one with a larger 80 Wh battery and the 165Hz screen, then you'll have a great gaming laptop for the money. As you could probably tell from my review, I really like this laptop and what it delivers for the price, but should you go out and buy it in the end of 2024? As I said in the beginning of the video, if you can find it for the right price, just go ahead and buy it. If you made it this far or just skipped to the end, it's been a while since I've made a video, so tell me what you think I can improve on and what you like and dislike. And I'll see you again sometime in the future.